What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back into another video. Today I want to go over a build that I've been using on my Warlock over the last few days that is really good. It's going to give you the ability to get your super back within 60 seconds in certain situations. It's going to give us a ton of ability regen. Also, it's going to lean into our survivability with some of the aspects and fragments that we're using within the Prismatic subclass. And it's also just good throughout the entire game. You could use this in beginner content. You could use it in the raid, in-game content, anywhere. It's going to be a good build for you. Now, with that being said, the exotic that we're leaning into within this build is going to be the exotic chest for your Warlock, and it's going to be the Mantle of Battle Harmony. Now, this exotic does have the armor perk on it called Absorption Cells, which is final blows with weapons matching your equipped super damage type grant you super energy. Now, for a basic red bar enemy, you're going to get about 1.5% of your super. For majors and bosses, you'll get about 4.5%, which is really good. And what's great about this is there's no cooldown for it. So as you kill adds, you're going to be constantly building that super energy. It also has, when your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary bonus to weapon damage of that type. So if your super bar is full, you're basically going to get weapon surge ×4, which I think is like right around 25% additional damage if you choose to hold on to that super to until a certain situation and just kill things with your weapons. Now, moving over to our subclass and our super of choice for this setup, and that is going to be the Song of Flame. Now, this allows you to unleash your inner fire, making your equipped weapons radiant and enhancing your abilities. While Song of Flame is active, you and nearby allies regen abilities more quickly, are more resistant to incoming damage, and your solar and kinetic weapons scorch targets. And this is a great super, guys. It's probably one of the best supers in the game right now. You get that 25% radiant buff while this is active. You're also going to gain a 50% damage resist while it's active, and you're going to more than double your ability regen rate for you and your allies while you have this thing proc. So this is a really good way to go. Moving over to our class ability, we're going to be using the Phoenix Dive. You can certainly go with Healing Rift if you would prefer, but in my case, I'm using Phoenix Dive for that cooldown. I think it's the best way to go. In terms of our melee, guys, I'm using the Arcane Needle. This allows you to sling a woven needle that will embed in your target, unraveling them. Activate your melee ability again to chain up to 2 additional attacks, so you get 3 melee attacks with this setup. I prefer this. I use a strand weapon as my primary. We'll talk about here in a moment. And just being able to weaken the enemies a little bit before you attack like thicker enemies, I think it's a great way to go. You can certainly use something like Penumbral Blast if you want more of a panic melee to stop aggressive enemies from attacking. You can certainly go that route, or you could use Incinerator Snap instead if you want to work on scorching targets. But in my case, I'm going to be using that Arcane Needle. Now, in terms of my grenade, guys, I'm going to be using Vortex Grenade, a grenade that creates a vortex that pulls targets inward and continuously damages those trapped inside. In my opinion, this is the best grenade that you could use for this setup. It's going to lean into us proccing Devour, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. Now, moving over to our aspects, the first aspect we're going to be using is Feed the Void. This allows you to defeat a target with any ability to activate Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. Now, we're going to be able to proc Devour with any ability kill, so that melee or that grenade is going to proc Devour and really lean into our survivability. This is a great aspect to use in this build. The second aspect we're using is going to be Bleak Watcher, which allows you to consume your grenade to convert it into a stasis turret, really for map control. Now, this is flexible. You guys could change this out if you want to. You could go with Hellion, which is a great way to go if you want to work on killing more targets and scorching them. Or you could certainly do Weaver's Call if you want to activate that class ability to launch 3 Threadlings at enemies. The problem with these other two is it's going to kill enemies, which is going to take away from us being able to gain our super, because we're trying to work on getting, elemental weapon kills, like solar weapon kills in this build, to build that super up as fast as possible. But if you prefer either one of these two, you could throw it in. I chose Bleak Watcher just for the map control. Now, moving over to our fragments, guys, the first one I'm going with is going to be Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, your ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. That's a mouthful. This does give us a +10 to Discipline, and really we're just trying to get Transcendent as fast as possible, so this is a great way to go. Moving over to our second fragment, it's going to be Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. So we do have some, obviously our melee being darkness, our grenade being light. We're using light weapons. We're also going to have a darkness weapon on. So it's a great fragment to pair up with our setup. Moving over to our third fragment, we're going to be using Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. Now, this is great because, again, we're using that Arcane Needle for our melee, so we'll be able to do a little bit more damage having that debuff. We're also using the Stasis Turret, which is going to help with this as well. This fragment does give you a +10 to Discipline as well, guys. The fourth fragment that we are using is going to be Facet of Protection. This fragment is basically going to make you a little bit more tanky. It's while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. You also get a +10 to Strength. So being able to take more damage, always a good thing. The last fragment we're going to be using, guys, is Facet of Dominance. Your Void Grenades weaken targets and Arc Grenades will jolt targets. You do have a -10 to Discipline here, but since we're using that Void Grenade to proc Devour, this is a great fragment to use here. Now, moving over to the mods I'd recommend with this setup. On our helmet, there's only one that I'd really recommend, and you can throw a couple of these on, but it's going to be a Harmonic Siphon, which allows rapid solar weapon final blows to create an orb of power, and getting that orb of power is huge in this setup. We want to get those as often as we possibly can. Now, moving over to our gauntlets, the first one I threw on is going to be Fauna Focus, which allows you to collect an orb of power and causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. You gain a bonus to Discipline while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. This is going to help us get that grenade back. You could do a melee one here as well if you'd prefer, but to me, I just want to get that Void Grenade back as often as possible so we can proc Devour over and over. The next one I'm throwing on is Fastball so we can increase our grenade throw distance. And the last one I threw on was a Harmonic Loader just to increase the reload speed of our solar weapons. Now, moving over to our chest, guys, and realistically, there's only one I'm going to recommend here. You can throw on whichever resist mods you want, but I did throw on a Charged Up to increase the maximum number of stacks of armor charge that we can carry by 1. Again, because our armor charge is going to be decaying, having a 4 stack of armor charge opposed to 3 is always good, and that's just going to improve our weapon damage and our grenade recharge rate. Now, moving over to our boots, guys, I am throwing on a double solar weapon surge, which is basically going to allow our solar weapons to gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. If you don't want to do the solar weapon surge, you could, you could definitely throw on something like Recuperation just to be able to get that health back. But to me, we want to be able to kill enemies as fast as possible, so that double solar weapon surge is a great way to go. Now, moving over to our bond, I'm going to be throwing on a Bomber mod to get that grenade back as fast as possible. We're also throwing on a Time Dilation mod, which is your decaying armor charge has a longer duration. And I'm also throwing on Powerful Attraction so we can collect those orbs of power a little bit easier. Now, moving over to the stats that I'd focus on with this build and weapons that I'm using with this setup. First, on the stats side, I'd really focus on Resilience and Recovery and do a minor focus on Discipline. I really wouldn't put much of a focus into Intellect here because of the exotic that we're using. We're going to be getting those supers so fast anyways. This one's really not super important here. So I'd really focus on these 3. I think Resilience, Recovery, Discipline to get that grenade back would be a really good way to go. Now, in terms of weapons that I'd recommend with this setup, guys, the main one I'm going to recommend is Sunshot because it's just such a great ad clear weapon. It's really a no-brainer to use with this setup. If you don't want to use an exotic in this slot and you're looking to use your exotic for like your heavy or primary or something, your kinetic slot, I'd recommend really anything with Incandescent on it just to get that area of effect damage would be really good. So, it's up to you. You could use any of them. I mean, you could use a Luna's Howl if you've got Incandescent on it. I have an Adhorative, which is really good. I have a crafted version of it with Heal Clip and Incandescent, so I've thrown that on as well. Either way, you could definitely do it. You could even throw on No Hesitation if you have one with Incandescent on that. Would be a great way to go too. in terms of my primary weapon, I'm throwing on the Call. I've talked about this in some of my previous videos. The sidearm is absolutely amazing. I do have a crafted version of it with lead from gold and one for all. I think I'm going to do a separate video on this weapon, but this is going to be a great weapon to use with some of the seasonal artifact perks that we're going to talk about in just a moment. And in terms of heavy, you could really use anything you want. I've been using Apex Predator. You could use a linear, you could use an LMG, so completely up to you guys. Now, moving over to our seasonal artifact perks that I'd recommend with this build, there's only a couple that I'm going to throw out there. So the first one's going to be Winning Hand, which is while using weapons with the Dealer's Choice Origin trait, combatant precision final blows or rapidly defeating combatants cause the target to explode, dealing solar damage to nearby combatants. Having several equipped weapons with the Dealer's Choice Origin trait increases the effect of the explosion. So this is a really good one to use because we are using the Call. So again, kind of a no-brainer to throw this on. Another one that I would throw on is Threaded Blast. Destroying a tangle with a strand weapon creates a larger and more damaging explosion. Because we're using the Arcane Needle and we do have the Call on, I think this is a great way to go as well. Another one I would definitely recommend is going to be Elemental Siphon. Rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super. Create an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So since we're using Sunshot and we do have a solar super on, we're going to be able to get those elemental pickups all over the place, which will in our case I think is a fire sprite, and that improves our grenade regen rate. Another one I would definitely throw on is going to be Radiant Orbs. While you have a Solar or Prismatic subclass equipped, picking up an Orb of Power makes you Radiant, and being Radiant is always a good thing, so we get that bump in damage. There's two more that I want to recommend. This one's going to be Void Hegemony. I think I said that right. While you have a Void or Prismatic subclass equipped, defeating weakened targets provides a small Void overshield, so it's going to help us with survivability. And since we do have Prismatic on and we're going to be weakening targets with our grenades, this is a great way to go because of those fragments we're using. And there's one more that I haven't unlocked yet, but I think this is a great way to go. This is going to be Expanding Abyss. Void sources deal increased damage to weakened targets. Again, we're going to be able to weaken targets with our grenade, so this just makes a ton of sense to use, guys. All right, to wrap things up, guys, this build is absolutely amazing. Honestly, I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Like I said, it's going to be able to serve you through the entire game, whether it's easy content, in-game content, raids. The DPS that you're actually going to get from the super and being able to use your weapons with it is actually kind of insane as well. And you're going to be able to get those supers back super quick. Now, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. If you think we should move some stuff around, any recommendations you guys have, please leave those in the comments. Also, a thumbs up on the video and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I cannot thank you guys for the amazing support that you provided over the last few months. So guys, with that being said, we're going to go into some gameplay. I really hope you enjoyed the build. So let's take a look at it, guys. All right, let's head over here to Altars of Sorrow and see how fast we can get kills. So about half on our super already. Try to get Devour going again, which we do. Thought I lost it, but maybe not. What this guy did down here. Bros. And we got a super. We're gonna go ahead and pop it, dude. And the super shreds, man. It really does. I mean, these yellow bars are not like super easy. You can see how fast it took him down just with a couple grenades and melee. So right when they come up, I'm gonna proc Devour immediately if possible. Keep that going as long as we can. Try to get a Arcane Needle in this guy. Lift on that. Another one in him. That'll proc Devour as well. Try to kill things as fast as we can here. Dude, I thought I was gonna blow myself up on that. We are about, what, 3/4? We got a super, bro. And again, with these, I mean, grenades and whatnot, I mean, they do a ton of damage. So you could also, you know, cycle it through. If you want to go with rockets too, you could. I'm out of ammo right now, but you could certainly throw some rockets in to kind of cycle those in. We still have Devour going, so we'll throw a turret down to try to get some map control. But again, you got Radiant, Devour, you've got your armor charges to be able to get that weapon surge plus your grenade regen back, which is great. You've got weakening grenades. And it just cycles through, man. It's just really, really, really good. And we haven't even hit the Transcendence super yet. We haven't even used it. So, like I said, super powerful. This is very good in the raid as well. I did use it on a couple of encounters, and like I said, it will last an entire DPS phase. So give it a shot, guys. Let me know what you think. One thing I do want to know, when I was talking about heavy weapons, I would recommend you guys use a heavy weapon that is solar. You could use whatever you want, but definitely use a solar weapon because of those surges. Okay, guys? Well, hopefully you guys enjoy the build. I'll see you guys in the next video, dude.